It leaves you with the only thing that matters: your actions, your choices, your willingness to do what needs to be done when everything in you says wait. That's self-mastery. That's control. That's power. The motivation isn't coming, but you don't need it. You never did. You've shattered the illusion of motivation. You understand now that waiting to feel ready is just another way of staying stuck. But there's an even deeper trap that's destroying your potential, one that feels good while it's killing your progress. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable. Waiting to feel motivated is the same as waiting to feel rich. It's a fantasy that keeps you stuck. The people who accomplish extraordinary things don't feel like doing it most of the time. They do it because they committed to a standard, not a mood. You don't need motivation. You need a system that works when motivation is nowhere to be found. Discipline is doing what you said you'd do long after the mood you set it in has left. This is the sentence you repeat to yourself every single morning, because your brain will negotiate, it will rationalize, it will give you 100 reasons why today doesn't count. Self-mastery means you stop negotiating with yourself and start honoring commitments like your life depends on it, because it does. Action creates momentum, not the other way around. Most people have it backwards. They think they need to feel inspired before they start. The truth is, you start and the inspiration follows. You write the first sentence, then the words come. You go to the gym, then the energy arrives. Stop waiting for permission from your emotions and start moving despite them. Chapter 3. Stop proving and start doing. There's a specific moment when most people kill their dreams. It's not when they give up. It's not when they fail. It's earlier than that. It's the moment they start talking about what they're going to do instead of actually doing it. Think about the last time you had a big goal, a real one. Maybe you wanted to start a business. Maybe you wanted to write a book. Maybe you wanted to completely transform your body or your career or your life. What did you do first? If you're like most people, you told someone about it. Maybe you posted about it on social media. Maybe you explained your entire plan to your friends. Maybe you spent hours talking about the person that you were going to become. And it felt good, didn't it? It felt like progress, like commitment, like you were already on your way. But here's what actually happened. You tricked your brain into thinking you'd already accomplished something. There's neuroscience behind this. When you tell people about your goals, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical you get when you actually achieve something. So by talking about what you're going to do, you get a hit of the reward without doing any of the work. And that satisfaction, that premature sense of accomplishment, it kills your motivation to actually execute. This is why people who constantly post about their transformation never transform. This is why people who talk endlessly about their goals never reach them. This is why the loudest people about what they're going to do are usually the ones doing the least. They're getting their validation from the announcement, not the achievement. And validation is a drug, one of the most addictive drugs in human experience. Every like, every comment, every "you got this" from someone who barely knows you, it all feeds the part of your brain that craves approval. And the more you feed it, the hungrier it gets. Pretty soon, you're not working on your goals. You're working on the performance of working on your goals. You're not building the business. You're posting about building the business. You're not writing the book. You're talking about writing the book. You're not transforming your life. You're curating the image of someone who's transforming their life. And there's a massive difference between the two. Let me be clear. The need for external validation is the death of self-mastery. Because the moment you need someone else to affirm your decisions, you've given them control over your life.
The moment you require approval before you act, you've handed someone else the keys to your potential. And most people will never give you permission to be great. They won't mean to hold you back. They'll think they're being helpful. They'll say things like, "Be realistic," and "What if it doesn't work out?" and "Maybe you should wait until you have more experience." They'll project their own fears onto your dreams. They'll measure your potential by their limitations. And if you're listening for their approval, you'll shrink yourself to fit their expectations. That's not self-mastery. That's self-betrayal. The strongest people you know don't need to be understood. They don't need people to validate their choices. They don't need permission to pursue what matters to them. They've learned the most liberating truth. Other people's opinions are not your responsibility to manage. Read that again. Other people's opinions are not your responsibility to manage. You are not required to make your goals make sense to people who have different priorities than you. You are not obligated to defend your ambitions to people who've settled for less. You are not responsible for making small-minded people comfortable with your growth. Your job is to do the work. That's it. That's the entire job. Not to talk about the work, not to post about the work, not to explain the work to people who wouldn't understand it anyway. Just do the work. Here's what that looks like in practice. You stop announcing your intentions. You stop sharing your plans before they're executed. You stop posting your goals before you've made progress. You go silent. You disappear into the work. You let people wonder where you went. And then, when you've actually done something worth showing, when you've built something real, when you've transformed in a way that can't be denied, then you let your results speak. Because here's the truth about confidence. You can't think your way into it. You can't affirm your way into it. You can't get it from other people's encouragement. Confidence comes from evidence. It comes from the stack of promises you've kept to yourself. It comes from the proof that when you say you're going to do something, you actually do it. It comes from the track record of following through when no one was watching. Every time you do what you said you would do, you make a deposit in your confidence account. Every time you quit, every time you make excuses, every time you choose comfort over commitment, you make a withdrawal. And most people are overdrawn. They've spent years breaking promises to themselves, and they wonder why they don't believe in themselves anymore. You want confidence? Stop talking and start building evidence. You want self-belief? Stop seeking external validation and start validating yourself through action. You want people to take you seriously? Stop trying to convince them with words and start showing them with results. This is the shift. This is where amateurs become professionals. This is where talkers become doers. The amateur needs everyone to know what they're working on. The professional works in silence and lets the work speak. The amateur needs encouragement to keep going. The professional encourages themselves through consistent execution. The amateur needs to prove they're serious. The professional's results are the only proof they need. Which one are you? And before you answer, look at your behavior, not your intentions. Because your behavior reveals your true operating system. If you spend more time talking about your goals than working on them, you're an amateur. If you need people to understand your vision before you'll pursue it, you're an amateur. If you're constantly seeking validation for decisions you've already made, you're an amateur. And there's nothing wrong with being an amateur as long as you're honest about it and willing to change. But if you want to master yourself, if you want to control your life, if you want to become the person you keep talking about becoming, you have to kill the need for external approval. You have to learn to operate from internal validation, to trust your own judgment, to move forward even when no one understands, to keep going even when no one's cheering. This is lonely. I won't pretend it's not. There will be moments when you want to share what you're building, moments when you crave feedback or encouragement or just acknowledgement that you're on the right path. And in those moments, you have a choice. You could reach out for validation and get that temporary hit of dopamine that derails your momentum. Or you can turn that need into fuel and channel it back into the work. One path keeps you dependent on others. The other path makes you unstoppable. Here's a practice that will change your life. For the next 90 days, tell no one about your goals. Not your friends, not your family, not social media, no one. Just work. In private. In silence. With no audience and no applause. Every time you want to post about it, don't. Every time you want to explain your vision to someone, don't. Every time you want credit for effort, remind yourself that the only credit that matters is results. This will be uncomfortable. Your ego will hate it. Your need for validation will scream. That part of you that wants recognition will feel starved. Good. That's the part that needs to die, because that part is not serving you. That part is keeping you small. That part is trading real progress for fake validation. And you're better than that. When you work in silence, something profound happens. You stop performing and start producing. You stop caring what people think and start caring about what you're creating. You stop measuring success by likes and comments and start measuring it by actual progress. The work becomes pure, uncontaminated by the need for approval. And ironically, this is when people start paying attention. Not when you're talking about what you're going to do, but when you're actually becoming someone different. When your transformation is undeniable. When your results speak louder than any announcement ever could. That's when they notice. That's when they ask what you've been doing. And then you'll have a secret, one that most people never discover, because they're too busy seeking approval. The answer you give them will be simple. I stopped talking and started doing.
Let me tell you what happens when you master this principle. You become dangerous. Not in a harmful way, but in the way that makes people uncomfortable because they can't figure you out. You're not seeking their approval, so they can't control you with it. You're not asking for their opinion, so they can't project their limitations onto you. You're not explaining your choices, so they can't talk you out of them. You just move. Quietly. Consistently. Relentlessly. And by the time they realize you've changed, you're already 10 steps ahead of where they thought you'd be. That's power. That's self-mastery. That's freedom. So here's your directive. Stop proving, stop explaining, stop announcing. Stop seeking validation for decisions you've already made. Just do the work. Let your results be your resume. Let your transformation be your testimony. Let your consistency be your credibility. The world is full of talkers. Be a doer. The world is full of people seeking approval. Be someone who approves of themselves through action. The world is full of announcements. Be a result. You don't need their permission. You don't need their understanding. You don't need their encouragement. You need your commitment. You need your discipline. You need your willingness to work when no one's watching. That's all you've ever needed. Stop trying to convince people you're serious. Show them by disappearing into the work and emerging transformed. Stop trying to make people believe in you. Believe in yourself through evidence, through follow-through, through kept promises. Stop waiting for validation. Validate yourself by becoming someone who honors their word no matter what. The talking is over. The proving is over. The performing is over. Now comes the doing. And the doing changes everything. You understand now that validation is a trap that keeps you performing instead of producing. But there's a deeper cost to seeking approval that most people never see until it's too late. A cost that compounds silently while stealing your life. The need for validation is the death of self-mastery. Every minute you spend explaining your goals, defending your choices, or seeking approval is a minute you're not executing. The people who truly control their minds understand this. Your work is the only proof you need. Let your results speak when your silence can't be ignored anymore. Public declarations drain the energy you need for private execution. Science shows that telling people about your goals gives you a premature sense of accomplishment, which kills your motivation to actually do the work. Stop posting about the transformation. Stop talking about what you're going to become. Go silent, go to work, and let them wonder where you went until you show up, transformed. Confidence comes from evidence, not affirmations. You can't think your way into self-belief. You have to build it through repetition and proof. Every promise you keep to yourself is a deposit in your confidence account. Every time you quit, you make a withdrawal. Master your mind by mastering your follow-through, and watch how quickly doubt disappears.
Chapter 4. The Silent Cost of Seeking Validation. There is a specific type of prison that doesn't have bars. It doesn't have walls. It doesn't even look like a prison from the outside. It's the prison of needing to be understood. And most people will spend their entire lives trapped inside it without ever realizing they have the key. Let me show you what this looks like. You make a decision, a good decision, one that aligns with your values and your goals. Maybe you decide to quit a job that's draining you. Maybe you decide to end a relationship that's keeping you small. Maybe you decide to pursue something unconventional. And then what happens? You feel the need to explain it, to justify it, to make sure everyone understands why you're doing what you're doing. You have conversations where you defend your choice. You craft social media posts that present your reasoning in the most palatable way possible. You lose sleep worrying about what certain people think. And here's the devastating part. The moment you need people to understand you, you've given them control over you. Because now your peace depends on their approval. Your confidence depends on their agreement. Your ability to move forward depends on their validation. That's not freedom. That's dependence. And most people never escape it because it doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like a connection. It feels like caring about relationships. It feels like being considerate. But what it actually is, what it really is a subtle form of self-abandonment. Every time you change your path because someone doesn't understand it, you betray yourself. Every time you shrink your goals to make someone else comfortable, you betray yourself. Every time you prioritize their opinion over your own knowledge, you betray yourself. And you can only betray yourself so many times before you forget who you actually are. This is the silent cost. Not the obvious rejection, not the clear criticism, but the slow erosion of your self-trust that happens when you consistently prioritize external validation over internal alignment. Let me be brutally clear about something. Most people will never understand you, and that's okay. That's not a problem to solve, that's just reality. They're living different lives. They have different priorities. They're operating from different values and different fears and different limitations. Your risk tolerance isn't theirs. Your vision isn't theirs. Your definition of success isn't theirs. So why are you trying to get them to understand? Why are you explaining your dreams to people who settled for less? Why are you defending your ambitions to people who are afraid of their own? Why are you seeking approval from people who've never done what you're trying to do? It doesn't make sense. But you keep doing it because you've been conditioned to believe that mattering to other people is the same thing as mattering. It's not. You can matter to yourself, you can validate yourself, you can approve of yourself, and when you learn to do that, when you truly internalize that your own approval is the only one that counts, everything changes. Here's what most people don't realize. The need for validation is an addiction, and like any addiction, it gets worse over time. It starts small. A few likes on a post, a compliment from a friend, an acknowledgement that you're doing something right, and your brain lights up. Dopamine floods your system. You feel seen. You feel valued. You feel like you matter. So you do it again and again and again. Pretty soon you're not making decisions based on what's right for you. You're making decisions based on what will get you the most validation. You're not living your life. You're performing a version of your life that you think will be most acceptable to your audience. And the audience, it keeps growing. It's not just your family anymore. It's your friends, your coworkers, your social media followers, strangers on the internet who you'll never meet. Everyone gets a vote. Everyone gets an opinion. And somehow their opinions start mattering more than your own. This is how you lose yourself. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, over years of small compromises and subtle adjustments and constant people-pleasing, until one day you wake up and you realize you're living someone else's idea of a good life. You're pursuing goals that don't excite you. You're in relationships that don't fulfill you. You're making choices that make sense to everyone except the person who has to live with them, you. And the worst part? You can't even blame anyone else because no one forced you into this. You volunteered. You handed over your power one approval-seeking moment at a time. But here's the truth you need to hear. You can take that power back right now, today. You do it by making one simple decision. I will no longer require other people to understand my choices. Not your parents, not your partner, not your friends, not your followers. You will live in a way that makes sense to you, and you will let everyone else make of it what they will. This doesn't mean you become cold or disconnected. It doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop giving them veto power over your life. You can listen to feedback. You can consider perspectives. You can appreciate input. But at the end of the day, you make decisions based on your values, your vision, and your voice, not theirs. Here's what this looks like in practice. Someone questions your decision. They ask why you're doing what you're doing. They suggest that maybe you're making a mistake. And instead of launching into a detailed explanation, instead of defending yourself, instead of trying to convince them, you simply say, I appreciate your concern. This is what's right for me. That's it. No justification, no defense, no need to make them agree. Because their agreement is not required for you to move forward. Read that again. Their agreement is not required for you to move forward. This will be uncomfortable, especially if you spent your whole life seeking approval. Your conditioning will tell you that you're being rude, that you're being selfish, that you're being difficult. You're not. You're being sovereign. You're being self-possessed. You're being loyal to yourself instead of performing for others. And that loyalty is everything. Let me tell you about the people who've mastered this. The ones who've broken free from the need for validation. They move differently. They speak differently. They exist differently. They don't over-explain. They don't defend their choices to people who wouldn't support them anyway. They understand that some people will misinterpret them. Some people will judge them. Some people will be disappointed. And they're completely okay with that. Not because they don't care about people, but because they care more about their own integrity than about managing other people's opinions. This is the most liberating shift you can make. The moment you stop needing to be understood is the moment you become free. Free to take risks others wouldn't take. Free to make choices others wouldn't make. Free to live in a way that's true to you regardless of who approves. But there's something you need to understand about this freedom. It's not given to you. You have to claim it. You have to actively choose again and again to trust yourself more than you trust the crowd, to value your own approval more than theirs, to move forward even when people think you're crazy. This is where self-mastery lives, in the gap between what they think you should do and what you know you must do. And every time you close that gap by choosing yourself, you get stronger, more confident, more aligned. Every time you open that gap by seeking their approval, you get weaker, more dependent, more lost. The choice is yours, but you have to make it consciously, because if you don't decide to validate yourself, you'll spend your whole life begging others to do it for you. And that's exhausting, that's limiting, that's no way to live. Here's your practice. For the next 30 days, make decisions without explaining them. Not big life-altering decisions that require discussion, but everyday decisions. What you eat, how you spend your evening, what you say no to, what you prioritize. Just make the choice and move on. No justification, no defense, no need to make them agree. Because you're handling your affairs directly, and you're setting the standard of detaching your internal worth from any external validation. You aren't assigning value to any outsiders asking you to prove what you're doing. You will start to feel something you haven't felt in a long time: autonomy. The sense that you are the author of your own life, not the character in someone else's story. That feeling is worth protecting, worth cultivating, worth choosing over and over again. Because here's the ultimate truth. You will never please everyone. You will never be understood by everyone. You will never get unanimous approval. So stop trying. Stop exhausting yourself trying to make everyone comfortable with your choices. Stop shrinking to fit their expectations. Start living from the inside out instead of the outside in. Start trusting yourself more than you trust their opinions. Start understanding that their inability to understand you is not your problem to fix. You don't need their permission. You don't need their approval. You don't need their understanding. You need your own.